Hello everyone. I'm here to give you a review of another economic indicator that came out last week, and it's consumer sentiment. And I want to give you an idea of how that relates to the broader economy and how it relates to our class. Now, if you remember, both in my microeconomics and macroeconomics, we discussed supply and demand. So supply and demand, let me just draw this right here. So supply and demand, you got a supply curve, you got a demand curve. Here's price, here's quantity. And what we discussed is that there is one price, the equilibrium price, that's going to achieve allocative efficiency. In other words, where supply equals demand. You're producing what people want. And when you change price, let's say P1, you move along the demand curve this way. So demand moves this way, so that's going to be new quantity demanded. And you move along the supply curve this way, and this is going to be our new quantity supplied. And if price is above equilibrium, as you see right here, this is going to cause a surplus. And if price is below equilibrium, it's going to cause a shortage. And what we discuss is that when you change a determinant of demand or a determinant of supply other than price, these curves shift. For example, let me just erase here. Get all this stuff out of here. So for example, let's just focus on the demand curve. Here we have quantity, that's a supply curve, sorry. Get out of there. Let's go back to the demand curve. Here's a demand curve, price, quantity. Now, if you, let's say, increase the incomes of consumers, and this is a normal good, that's going to shift the demand curve this way. So in other words, when you change a determinant of demand, it moves the entire curve. And we discussed this way back in chapter 3. Now, one of the other things that can shift the demand curve is, and actually supply curve too, are expectations. So in other words, if consumers become more optimistic about the future, they will demand more at all price levels, and that's going to shift the demand curve over to the right. Of course, if they become more pessimistic, that will shift the economy over to the demand curve over to the left. Now, what can we use as a representation of expectations? Well, there are two major economic indicators. One is called consumer sentiment, and the other one is called consumer confidence. And these are both monthly surveys that ask consumers questions about how they feel about the future. And so these are ways to actually see if this could actually shift the demand curve for the entire economy. Now, when we talk about the demand curve for the entire economy, in macroeconomics we call that aggregate demand, right? And so we're always looking for signals as to what direction demand overall is moving. And one of the key indicators we look at is consumer confidence or consumer sentiment. Now, consumer sentiment just came out this last week. Let me just erase all this stuff for you. And I want to show you what those numbers mean to the broader economy. Now, what I have up here is FRED, the Federal Reserve Economic Data, and I would really encourage you to use it because it's a great way for you to get your hands on economic data all around the country, and actually it has some international data too. And I'm going to show you how to use it. So first of all, what we've got to do is we've got to go into the search box right here. Oh, I'm sorry, right here. Come on, I'm going to go right. Let me turn off the drawing thing first. No, I'm not going to save me. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm simply going to type in consumer sentiment. And let's see what happens. And you see that this is the one we want. It's produced by the University of Michigan right here. And we're going to want this. And I'm simply going to say add to graph. hold on one second. And see, here's the data. Now this data goes all the way back to 1980. What I can do is this. What's great about this site is, do you see this over here? This little slide rule right here. Oops. I could move this over. It's not letting me do it with my pen here. That's not. Let me do it. Let me try it again. Hold on. Okay, I think I fixed it here. Now if I click and hold, I can adjust the dates that it covers, and look at this. Now I could see a little more compact bit of history here, and you can see how this measurement, so when this line is going up, that means consumer sentiment or consumer expectations are increasing, and when the line is going down, that means they're falling. Now these shaded areas that you see here and you see here, this represents GDP, or in other words, it represents changes in economic activity. The shaded areas show you when GDP is actually contracting, and this is what we call a recession. So you can see we had a very short recession here in the early 2000s, and a rather long one in 2008-2009. Now, if consumer sentiment does what we think it does, this should be able to predict changes in economic activity. And look at, lo and behold, what do we see here? Let me get my drawing up here. What we see here is a drop in consumer sentiment starting right about here, this period in time right around here. And look when the recession started. The recession started right here. So you can see that this gave us a little early warning, and that's why we call consumer sentiment a leading economic indicator. Leading in terms of it gives us a heads up before economic activity starts to decline. Now, does it give us a heads up when economic activity starts to increase? Now, that's right here. This is where the recession ends, right? So economic activity is starting to increase, and you can see that it hits a bottom right around here, right? And you can see that it starts to go up, and this white space, it represents expanding economic activity. Now, what do we see lately? Well, you can see that it's actually been kind of trading sideways, right? Consumer sentiment. Now, let me give you a more magnified image here. I'm going to change this to here. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go all the way to here. So you can see this is the more recent data, and you can see that we've had this sudden drop. Now this has got people some concern because we see that it's been trading or trending horizontally, really no change, staying around 95, a value here. But lately we've saw this sudden dip, and now this taken in with other economic indicators have been showing possible future economic weakness. Now we don't know, but if we're using consumer sentiment as a guide, this could point to a recession coming up. Now, let me just go back to where we were before. Hold on. You can see that in July we had a score of 98.4, and then in August it fell to 89.8. Now that's a significant drop, but it's only 1 month change, so that doesn't make a trend. So next month we're really going to be interested to see if it falls even further. If that's the case, then the chances for an economic downturn within 6 to 12 months increases significantly. So I just want to let you know how some of this data can help you understand what we've covered in microeconomics, basic supply and demand, and how it's going to help us cover macroeconomics when we talk about aggregate supply, aggregate demand. So this is a good example of using data that comes out every single day and how it applies to our class. Now, I highly encourage you to ask any questions or make any comments about this. You can either email me or comment below with the reply. So I look forward to your comments and see what you have to say. That's all.